All right, the final part in this series is adding and subtracting fractions. So it doesn't really matter. It's the same rule for both of them. So the process, step 1, find a common denominator. All right, so let's do an example at the same time off to the side here. So let's do 2/3 plus 3/5 minus 1/2. Okay, so we're going to do 3 fractions. We need to find a common denominator. So our steps for this, we take our denominators. So I'm going to do this underneath over here, 2, 3, and 5, and we list our factors. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. Some of you might be quicker at this. You may not have to write them out, and that's fine. 3s, so 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Let's hope we don't have to go higher than that. 5, 10, 15, 20. So is there a common denominator? So when we look here, let's see a 20. So nope, I don't see one quite yet, so we're going to have to go a little bit higher. So 25, 30, let's go up to 30. So 22, I know I'm going to get to 30 with this, going up by 2s. What about this one? 24, 27, 30. All right, so we have our common denominator of 30. So over here, we now are going to write each fraction, and what I'm going to suggest, we know the common denominator is going to be 30. All right, so step 2 is multiply each denominator to get the common denominator. All right, so what do we have to multiply each one by? So 3, we have to multiply that one by 10. 3 times 10 is 30. 5 times 6, and 2 times 15. All right. Step 3, I'm just going to move it so you can see this a little bit better. Multiply each numerator by the same factor. All right, so going back to our example here, that means I'm going to have to multiply the top by 10, this one by 6, that one by 15. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to end up with 20 plus 18 minus 15. And the final step then is add, subtract the numerator. All right, and again, this is review from last year, great. So what do we end up with? I think it's 23 over 30. So there's our example that goes along with our explanation. Okay, this component here, so this step here, if you can do this in your head quicker or use one of the charts we have on the back of the workbooks, by all means go ahead. I don't need to see that entire process. All right, so there's your adding and subtracting. So all I've left to do is a couple of examples. Simplify the following. So what I want to do is I'm just going to do some multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting examples. So if we're moving too quick, just pause the video. So 2/5 times 3/7. So like I said in the previous video or earlier in the note, I need to see this, what's in red for full marks. 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 7 is 35. So there's how you multiply the two fractions together. Step 2, let's do a division one. 3/4 divided by 2/7. All right, so what do I need to see? I'm going to do this with red. Anything in red I have to see. I need you to write it as 3/4. Oops, not divide anymore. So we multiply by the reciprocal, which means we take that second fraction. So I need to see this line here, and then I need to see that as well. So that is an absolute must. 3 times 7 is 21. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay? So you switch a division into a multiplication, and then they're the exact same. So if you look at the second step in number 2, it's the same as the first example. All right? I don't want to call this the easier ones, but those are the ones people seem to be more comfortable with. All right? There is an alternate method for doing the fractions. If you're having trouble with the rules, you can ask your teacher for an alternate process. So let's do some adding and subtracting ones again. I'm going to go with the 3 fraction ones, just because if you can do the 3 fraction ones, you can do the 2 fraction ones. So let's go 2 fifths plus a quarter minus, let's go 2 sevenths. All right, so we need to find, step 1 is we got to find a common denominator. So again, off to the side here, I have 5, I have a 4, and I have a 7. All right, so what you need to do is you need to be able to find a common denominator with these 3. So pretty tricky, especially when 7's in there, it's kind of an odd number. The shortcut for this, not always the best method, but going up by 5s, for example, you will get to 35. So 7 times 5 is 35, but you can't get to 35 with the 4. So the frustrating part when you have 3 numbers involved, if we were just doing 2 of them, the 2 fifths and the 2 sevenths, we'd be done. But the frustrating part with having 3 in there is that we have that extra factor. So the quick way, not the best way, is just to take your 3 denominators and multiply them together. Okay? So is that the best way? Definitely not, but it will give you a common denominator, because if you multiply them all together, the 140 was multiplied by 5 to get it. It was multiplied by 4. It's multiplied by 7. So each of them have a component in there. And actually, in fact, I think it is actually the lowest common denominator for this particular question. So that being said, common denominator will be 140. So how did we get it to be a 140? Well, I know that I had to multiply 5. This 5 got multiplied by 4 times 7. So I multiplied that by 28 whenever I do the bottom. I then have to do the top. The 4, well, it was multiplied by 5 and 7, so that was 35. And whenever I do the bottom, I got to do the top. And the 7, well, it was multiplied by the 5 and the 4, so that was a 20. So now I can find my common factors here. So 28 times 2 is 56, plus 35 minus 40. Now we can just add and subtract the top, and we find that we get 51 over 140, which does not reduce, and it is in fact the lowest common denominator. Okay, so definitely tricky. Tricky process to do this. Like I said, if you need some further examples, ask your teacher to do a couple of different approaches. For the most part, I think you'll be okay with the 2 fraction ones. The 3, I did the example of the harder one, just to give you an idea of what to expect in terms of the worst case scenario. Okay, so please, if you are having trouble with this, you need further explanation, ask your teacher for clarification or a different method. All right, we'll see you in the next video.